Hi, boys and girls. Today we're going to be reading chapter 24, which is called The Lady of the Lake. This is a little bit longer, so I hope you enjoy. Arthur and Alex awoke the next morning before sunrise. Finding a branch from the oldest tree in the woods would be challenging, and they didn't want to waste a moment of daylight. They headed straight for the woods and searched for hours, traveling well beyond the parts of the forest Arthur was familiar with. "We should mark the candidates as we find them," Alex said. She pointed to a particularly old tree they came across, and magically marked it with thousands of twinkling lights. "How will we know which one is the oldest?" Arthur asked. "Is there some sort of spell you can use to determine each tree's age?" "Not that I know of," Alex said. "I was just planning to chop them in half and count the rings." They searched the forest and marked the oldest trees well into the hours of the afternoon. At one point they entered a beautiful meadow and found Merlin and Mother Goose having a picnic. They were looking at the sky and taking turns magically shaping the clouds into objects and animals for the other to guess, a sorcerer's game of Pictionary. "It's a rabbit, or a squirrel," Mother Goose guessed. "No, it looks like a duck. Wait, I know what that is. It's Lester." "Correct. You're a natural at this, my dear," Merlin said. Lester was sitting beside them, and was rather offended that the large, fluffy cloud was supposed to resemble him. Alex could tell he had had his fill with Merlin and Mother Goose's shenanigans. "Lester, would you like to help Arthur and me find the oldest tree in the woods?" Alex asked. "Squaw!" the gander said, and nodded gratefully. Merlin and Mother Goose sat up once they saw Alex and Arthur had joined them in the meadow. "Don't look at us," Merlin said. "We may be the most ancient beings in the woods, but you can't have any of our branches." "Good one, Merle," Mother Goose laughed, and clinked his cup with hers. Alex couldn't help but laugh too, not at Merlin, but at Mother Goose. She had never seen Mother Goose enjoy herself as much as she did when she was with Merlin. She knew it was going to be difficult for her to part from Merlin when it was time to go back home, but Mother Goose wasn't the only one who would be leaving someone special behind. Alex and Arthur continued their quest with Lester waddling behind them. "Merlin is going to miss Mother Goose," Arthur said. "I don't think I've ever seen him so happy before." "Same for Mother Goose," Alex said. "She's been quite sad lately. It's nice to hear her laugh for a change." "It's probably for the best you two will be leaving shortly," Arthur said. "Can you imagine the mischief they might get into if you stayed?" "I'm afraid to think about it," Alex said. "I bet Merlin hopes Mother Goose still keeps in touch, though," Arthur said, and stuck out his bottom lip. "Merlin would be so sad if he never heard from her again." Alex side-eyed him. Obviously, they weren't talking about their elders anymore. "I'm sure Mother Goose would love to keep in contact with Merlin," Alex said. "But Mother Goose also knows that Merlin has a destiny to live, and she wouldn't want to distract him from that." "Ah, yes," Arthur said. "That whole destiny thing tends to get in the way of everything. That's very kind of Mother Goose, then." Alex went quiet. She had known Arthur for a day, and it was already hard to think about what life would be like without him. She tried to blame the sudden dependency on her age. What soon-to-be 15-year-old girl wouldn't be smitten with such a handsome and smart young man like Arthur? Although Alex had been smitten before, there was something special about Arthur. Perhaps in another lifetime, if they were beings of the same world, there could be more than friendship to explore. But she was very aware of her situation and the situation waiting at home, so Alex didn't let the idea tease her. Arthur had become very quiet too. She wondered if he was thinking the same thing. Arthur broke the silence to play another round of his favorite new game, pestering Alex. "Roughly how old am I when I'm crowned king?" he asked. "Arthur, I told you I'm not telling you anything else," Alex said. "Some things are meant to be discovered in time." "How about I say an age and you tell me if I'm close?" he suggested. 20? "You're relentless," she said, and glared at him. 25? Arthur guessed. Alex laughed at his persistence, but it only encouraged him. 30? he asked. "Oh, come on, please don't tell me it's after 40." To be honest, Arthur, I don't know, Alex said. There are several versions of your story, and I'm not entirely sure which one I'm in. Arthur found this prospect very intriguing. Versions, you say? He said. So there's more than one of me? Right now there could be other Arthurs walking around other forests. Arthurs who are braver, stronger, and more dashing than I? Impossible, Alex said with a smile. There might be other versions of your story, but there's only one Arthur like you. Arthur was very touched by this. Do you think there are other versions of you as well? He asked. Oh, yes, but they aren't walking around other stories, she said. There are plenty of versions other than the Alex you see beside you. Interesting, he said. Care to share? I don't want you to think less of me, Alex said. Come on, you know so much about me. Tell me the worst thing you've ever done. I promise I won't judge you. Alex was reluctant to tell him anything, but if he was going to be insistent about something, it was better to tell him stories about her life than give anything else away about his. There was a period whenever I got overwhelmed or upset, I would unintentionally cause things to happen, Alex confessed. Now we're getting somewhere, Arthur said. Please continue. The first time I saw the masked man's face, I was convinced he was my father, Alex explained. No one believed me, but I knew what I saw. I spent months agonizing over how it was possible. How did my dad come back from the dead and become such a monster? The questions were torture, and my tolerance was obliterated. Since my powers are fueled by my heart, my emotions would take over my body every time I became angry or sad. I had no control over what I said or did. So what happened? Arthur asked. One time my brother and I were chasing soldiers of the Grand Army, Alex said. Just as they were getting away, I caused a brick wall to appear in front of them. They slammed into it and broke their noses. So it works out in your favor sometimes, Arthur said. Rarely, Alex said. I used to ride a unicorn named Cornelius. He'd take me all over the kingdoms to the people who needed a ferry. When we were looking for the masked man, I was so desperate, I tried to use Cornelius to track him down. However, unicorns are magical creatures and they can't be used selfishly. So when it didn't work, I became really frustrated and vines shot out of the ground and wrapped around him. He was scared of me for weeks, but eventually came around. But I've tried to keep my distance ever since. Despite her obvious guilt, Arthur made light of it. That's kid stuff, he said. I know you've got a better story in you. One time I raised a tavern above the clouds and dropped it, she said. You're joking. Was anyone inside of it? Yes, me, Alex said. Not to mention my brother, all our close friends, and about 100 witches. Luckily, I came to my senses in time to save us before we crashed on the ground. Anything else? Arthur said. Alex was afraid she might scare Arthur away with her stories, but he stayed right at her side, captivated by every word. Actually, yes. I may have skipped a few details about the time the fairy council ungodmothered me. I might have accidentally attacked them with lightning and then disappeared into a wall of flames. Arthur let out a sound that was half a laugh and half a gasp. Alex Bailey, he condemned with a smirk. Note to self, never make you mad. I'm sure the council deserved it, though. Have you had any other episodes since then? Alex thought about it and was very happy to realize she hadn't. Not since I found out the masked man was my uncle, Alex said. He looks just like my dad. Anyone else would have come to the same conclusion. I suppose knowing I wasn't crazy like the rest of the world did put me in touch with my emotions. But you said you were certain of what you saw, Arthur said. And I was, believe me. So why did you let what others thought affect you so much? He asked. Alex had never put the whole experience into perspective. She and her brother had been through countless stressful situations where people often didn't believe them. Why did this one bother her so much? I guess that's a question as old as time, isn't it? Alex said. Why do any of us let the world dictate our personal truths? Squaw, Lester squawked, as if to say, tell me about it. Well, I only get 2 weeks with you after we collect the ingredients for the potion, Arthur said. But I hope to see as many versions of Alex as I can. Alex scrunched her lips so they wouldn't stretch into another smile, but Arthur saw right through the effort. He was charming even when he didn't mean to be. Fighting it only tempts me to make you smile more, he warned. They eventually discovered a large lake hidden deep in the woods. The water was cleaner and clearer than any other lake Alex had ever seen. There was a small island in the middle of the lake with nothing on it but a decrepit tree, by far the oldest tree they had encountered all day. That's it, Alex said. That's got to be the oldest tree in the woods. How are we going to get to it? Arthur asked. Alex looked back at Lester, and a needy smile came to her face. Lester, would you mind transporting us to the island? Lester looked out at the island and sighed. He didn't want to get his feathers wet, but since Alex rescued him from an afternoon of hearing the same stories told over and over again, he owed her one. He waddled down to the water and tested it with his webbed feet, sending a strong ripple through the still water. The gander had a seat on the water, but saw something that made him leap back to the land. Squaw! He squawked with fright. Squaw! Lester was trembling and gestured to the water with his beak. A geyser of water rose out of the lake like a fountain in slow motion, twisting and looping through the air until it formed the shape of a woman. Like a heartbeat, every few seconds a ripple started at her chest and traveled through her whole body. No birds are allowed on my waters, the water woman said. Shoo! Go defecate someplace else. Lester hid behind Alex and Arthur, who stared up at the woman in awe. The woman was surprised to see them, but seemed delighted by the company. Oh, hello there, she said. I hope I didn't frighten you. I work very hard to keep my lake pristine and must scare away the birds before they spoil my water. I didn't realize he was a pet. Lester gave the woman a dirty look. Who was she calling a pet? What? Sorry, who are you? Arthur asked. I know who she is, Alex said. Arthur, this is the Lady of the Lake. The Lady of the Lake was very pleased to be recognized. "'Tis I," she announced happily. "It's been ages since I had human visitors. My lake is so remote, very few people know it exists. What brings you here today?" The Lady of the Lake seemed nice enough. Neither Alex nor Arthur felt the need to hide their intentions. "We're searching the forest for an ingredient needed for a potion," Arthur said. "Do you by chance know how old the tree on your island is?" Alex asked. "It's been there for centuries," the Lady of the Lake said. "It may very well be the oldest tree in the forest." Alex and Arthur shared a smile, and their spirits soared. "Beautiful lady, would you kindly allow us to take a piece of it?" Arthur asked. "Oh, certainly," the Lady of the Lake said. "To be honest with you, it's a bit of an eyesore. Feel free to take as much of it as you want." "Thank you so much," Alex said. "It's greatly appreciated." Alex, Arthur, and Lester approached the water. The Lady of the Lake put her hand out to stop them. "You two may cross my waters, but the bird may not," she said. She waved a hand, and a line of boulders rose out of the water, creating a bridge to the island. "No problem," Alex said. "Lester, stay here." The goose watched as Alex and Arthur hopped across the rocks to the island. Arthur retrieved a dagger from his boot and cut off a small branch. "Let's get back to Merlin's now and start the potion," he said. "Excuse me, did you just say Merlin?" the Lady of the Lake asked. "Yes, he's a wizard," Arthur said. "Do you know of him?" "Of course I do," she said. "But how do you know him?" "He's a friend and mentor," Arthur said. It was like he'd said something that offended her. Suddenly, their bridge of boulders sank back into the lake. A wall of water shot into the air around the island, trapping Alex and Arthur. "What are you doing?" Alex asked. "Friends of Merlin are not friends of mine," the Lady of the Lake yelled. Her voice no longer had such a cheery disposition, but a scornful tone. The wall of water around the island began closing in on Arthur and Alex. Alex tried using magic to hold it back, but every time she raised a hand, a jet of water knocked it down. "Oi, bird! Go find Merlin! Tell him the Lady of the Lake requests his presence, and if he ignores my request this time, his friends will drown," the Lady of the Lake ordered. Lester didn't waste a minute. He flew into the sky and headed for help, squawking as he went. "Dear lady, I don't know what your quarrel is with Merlin, but it has nothing to do with us," Arthur said. "Please let us go." The Lady of the Lake ignored him. Her attention was fixed on her own reflection in the water. She conducted the water, forming her body to decrease and increase in places, giving herself a more attractive shape. Her hair grew longer, her waist smaller, and her hips curvier. She hummed to herself as she made the adjustments, like she was preparing for a date. A few minutes later, Lester returned with Merlin and Mother Goose on his back. They hopped off the bird and charged down to the edge of the lake. "Merlin, help us," Arthur pleaded. "Nimue, what is the meaning of this?" Merlin said to the Lady of the Lake. "Hello, Merlin," she said. "It's been a long time." "Release our apprentices at once," Merlin demanded. "Is that how you treat other lovers you haven't seen in 200 years?" the Lady of the Lake asked. "Lovers?" Mother Goose said. "What could you possibly bring to a relationship? Hydration?" "We've been through this 1,000 times, Nimue," Merlin said. "We were never together, and we never will be." "How can you say that after the romantic month we spent in the cave off the shore together?" the Lady of the Lake asked. "Or have you forgotten about that?" "I have not forgotten," Merlin said. "You flooded your brain and washed away all the sense, Nimue. You imprisoned me in that cave." "But when I released you, you promised to meet me at this lake," she said. "I've waited here for you for hundreds of years." "I lied to get out of the cave," Merlin said. "You forced yourself upon me so much it's a wonder I didn't burn to death." The Lady of the Lake's heartbeat raced so fast, her body was rippling out of control. "Time to let it go, H2O, Mother Goose said. "Let those children go, or we'll—" The Lady of the Lake suddenly grew 4 times in size, draining half the lake in the process. "Or what?" she asked. The water crept closer and closer to Alex and Arthur on the island. They were running out of land. They were moments away from being completely submerged. Clearly, Merlin and Mother Goose's demands weren't getting them anywhere. "Let's calm down and make an agreement, then," Merlin said. "Take me instead of the children." "Oh, Merle, you can't let this oversized puddle take you," Mother Goose said. "It's all right. I've dealt with damper characters before," he said. "So how about it, Nimue? Will you hand over our apprentices in exchange for me?" The Lady of the Lake considered it. Her rapidly rippling body calmed down and she reduced in size. "I can live with that," she said. The wall of water around the island dissolved and the boulders resurfaced. Merlin hopped across to the island, but before Alex and Arthur had time to cross to the land, the wall of water returned, trapping all 3 of them on the island. "Nimue, we had an agreement," Merlin yelled. "I know, but I lied," the Lady of the Lake laughed. "Isn't it wonderfully ironic?" Merlin, Arthur, and Alex all exchanged horrified looks. They didn't know how they were going to get out of this one. "Hey, lunatic of the lake, I'm giving you one last warning. Free my friends or I'm coming in there," Mother Goose warned. The Lady of the Lake laughed at her pityingly. "And what are you going to do, Granny?" she asked. "Geriatric aerobics?" Mother Goose squinted. Her jaw fell open and her cheeks turned red. Lester covered his eyes with his wings. He knew this wasn't going to be pretty. "Call me Granny one more time. I dare you," she said. "Granny, Granny, Granny," the Lady of the Lake sang. Mother Goose had had enough. She cracked her neck and rolled up her sleeves. It was time to take matters into her own hands. "That's it, sister," she said. "You've pushed me to the edge and let me dangle." Mother Goose ran into the lake and started punching and kicking the water. The Lady of the Lake just laughed at her attempts to cause harm. She sent several tall waves toward her, each one stronger than the next, knocking Mother Goose under, deep below the surface. "Mother Goose!" Alex yelled. Let her go, you miserable pond, Merlin ordered. Sorry, Merlin, but your friend is all washed up, the Lady of the Lake said. Just when they feared Mother Goose would never resurface, all the water in the lake gradually began to circle in a clockwise direction. The flow increased, catching the Lady of the Lake's attention, but she couldn't regain control of it. The water spun around the island faster and faster. Soon it was moving so fast, the Lady of the Lake couldn't keep her human form and dissipated into the rest of the water. The spinning lake rose into the air, forming a small hurricane. It was a powerful storm, and Merlin, Arthur, and Alex held on to the island's tree with all their might so they wouldn't be blown away. They saw Mother Goose standing at the bottom of the lake, twirling the storm into the air like a giant liquid lasso. Time to evaporate, you wet wench, Mother Goose yelled. She released her grip of the water, and every drop of the lake flew into the sky and turned into rain, misting the forest around them for miles. The lake was nothing but a wide, empty hole in the woods now. Merlin, Arthur, and Alex were in shock. They still grasped the island tree even though the storm was gone. Mother Goose brushed off her hands and placed them on her hips. She found their dumbfounded faces very amusing. I don't know about you, but I've worked up quite an appetite, she said. Let's get some dinner. Once they had eaten, Merlin let Alex borrow a small cauldron so she could begin making the portal potion. She filled it with water and placed it over the fireplace to let it boil. She cut the tree branch into tiny pieces and added it and Lester's feather to the cauldron. All we need is a liquefied lock and key from a loved one, Alex said. Arthur went down the hall of Merlin's cottage. Alex heard two loud clunks, and Arthur returned with a lock and key. Where did you get those? Alex asked. I just chipped them off of Merlin's bedroom door, he said. He's like a father to me, so it should work. Alex put the objects in a separate cauldron and then placed them into the fireplace with the other. Once the lock and key melted, she quickly poured the mixture in with the other ingredients before it could become solid again. Now all we need is 2 weeks of moonlight, Alex said. I know the perfect place, Arthur said. After the sun set, Arthur escorted Alex to a very tall and grassy hill a little ways into the woods. They could see the entire forest from the hill, and it also gave them the perfect view of the moon and stars. They placed the cauldron on the ground and lay on either side of it while the potion soaked up the moonlight. It's so interesting, Alex said. The moon and the stars look exactly the same here as they do in the fairy tale world and the other world. Perhaps you can take me to your world someday, Arthur said. I would love to see the other world and the fairy tale world. I'm not sure that's a good idea, Alex said playfully. You're very popular there. It would be very easy to snoop around and find out about your destiny. Arthur went silent and looked a little sad. There was something troubling him. What's wrong? Alex said. Did I say something to upset you? Of course not. I just haven't been very honest with you, he said. I know all the answers to the questions I tease you with. Merlin thinks he keeps a tight lip, but all he needs is a little ale in his system, and I can get any answer out of him that I want. I know how old I am when I'm crowned, and I know I'll be a great king. I also know about Camelot, the Round Table, and Guinevere. Then why have you been pestering me so much? Alex asked. Because you're awfully cute when you try concealing information, Arthur said. Has anyone ever told you that? Can't say they have, Alex said. Thank you. I'm glad I amuse you so much. You amuse me and amaze me, he said. There are a lot of things you make me feel. Arthur became quiet. Alex knew they had to change the subject. If they were any more honest with each other, it would only make their eventual farewell that much more painful. Can I ask you a question from someone whose destiny isn't written yet? Alex asked. Of course, Arthur said. If you know of all the challenges, all the pain, and all the heartbreak you'll endure, why stay on the path destiny has paved for you? Why not venture off and try creating a life for yourself that will be more enjoyable? Arthur didn't have to think long. The answer was ingrained in his heart. I'd like to think the choice falls under our pact of true greatness, he said. I believe the people of England deserve a great king, and if I'm meant to be that man, a man whose legacy will inspire the present and the future of the kingdoms here, and even beyond the kingdoms of this world, then it's worth every sacrifice. Alex was so moved and impressed by his answer, it sent chills through her whole body. I thought I knew everything about you, Arthur, but you keep surprising me, she said. He turned his head to her, and they stared into each other's eyes. Besides, who really knows what the future holds? Arthur said. As I learned yesterday, you never know when someone might drop in and change your world forever. As she looked into Arthur's blue eyes, Alex felt her mind slowly lose control of her body, but this time it was taken over by her heart. She leaned over and kissed Arthur. It surprised her as much as it surprised him. I like this version of you, Arthur said. Me too, Alex said. It's new. There were 1,000 reasons why she shouldn't have done it, but nothing seemed worse than not doing it again. Arthur kissed Alex back before she had the chance, and they stayed under the stars until there was no moonlight left for the potion to absorb. All right, that is the end of chapter 24. I will see you next time for chapter 25. Bye.